The hum of the jet engines filled the narrow cabin, steady and comforting, like the rhythm of a heart beating through metal and cloud. Flight 247 from Denver to Washington, D.C. was packed that morning, business travelers glued to laptops, a mother rocking a crying infant, a college kid dozing against the window. Among them sat a 12-year-old girl in row 9, seat C, small for her age and wrapped in an oversized gray hoodie that almost swallowed her whole. Her name was Sophie Miller. No one paid much attention to her. To the passengers, she was just another unaccompanied minor on her way to visit family, her ticket pinned neatly to her hoodie by the flight attendant. But to Sophie, every sound, the roll of luggage wheels, the chatter, the click of seatbelts felt amplified, sharp, alive with an unease she didn't fully understand. She sat with her stuffed bear, a soft, faded toy named Echo, resting on her lap. Its fur was worn thin, its button eyes slightly crooked. But sewn into one paw was a small patch of fabric, stitched with a single word in pale blue thread. Echo. Sophie rubbed her thumb across the letters, a quiet ritual she'd done every time she felt nervous. The engines roared as the plane taxied down the runway, trembling like a beast ready to leap into the sky. Sophie looked out the window, Denver's mountains fading under a sheet of morning mist, and swallowed hard. She didn't like flying. Not because of heights, but because every time she was trapped in a metal box like this, she remembered the night everything changed. It had been 5 years since that night. The night when men in black suits came to their house in the middle of the storm. The night her mother shouted, "Go with your father, Sophie," and the power went out. The night her father knelt before her, gripping her shoulders tightly and whispering words that made no sense at the time. If anyone says your code name, don't run. Don't speak. Just watch. Then he was gone. The engines thundered, and the plane lifted into the sky, tilting against the wind. Sophie's stomach flipped, but she kept her gaze steady on the window. Below, the city shrank into a patchwork of gray and green. The clouds swallowed them, and the world became a blur of white. The flight attendants began moving down the aisle, checking seatbelts and serving drinks. Sophie took a small apple juice, murmured a thank you, and tried to distract herself by flipping through the in-flight magazine. But her mind was elsewhere, drifting to her parents' faces, the ones she could barely remember clearly anymore. Her father had been a systems engineer for the Department of Defense, or at least that's what he told people. Her mother, a quiet woman who always double-locked the doors and avoided cameras, taught at a local college. To Sophie, they were just Mom and Dad. To the world, apparently, they'd been something else entirely. She didn't understand what. Not yet. The seatbelt sign blinked off. Passengers settled in. The steady hum of conversation filled the cabin. Sophie leaned back, closing her eyes. She'd been told this trip was routine, a simple flight to meet her aunt in Washington, where she'd stay until things were sorted. But no one had explained what things meant. Then, just as the captain's voice came over the intercom, calm and confident, the air seemed to freeze. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're currently flying at 36,000 feet. Weather ahead is clear for now, though we may encounter mild turbulence near Kansas City." The usual chatter resumed. A baby cried somewhere behind her. Sophie took a sip of juice and exhaled. But then, after a brief pause, his voice came again, quieter, more deliberate. "Attention. Echo to 9. Protocol sunrise confirmed." The words sliced through the air like glass. For a moment, Sophie thought she'd imagined it. The passengers around her didn't flinch. They kept reading, typing, sleeping. The mother in row 8 rocked her child. The businessman in row 10 ordered another coffee. No one reacted. But Sophie's fingers froze around her cup. The apple juice trembled. Echo 9. Her pulse quickened. Her breath caught in her throat. The phrase wasn't random. It wasn't pilot talk. It was her code name. The one she hadn't heard since that night. The one her father whispered before the world went dark. A slow shiver ran down her spine. She looked around the cabin, scanning faces. The flight attendants moved casually through the aisles, but one of them, a woman with auburn hair and a tight smile, seemed to glance at Sophie a little too long. The co-pilot passed behind the curtain, whispering something to the lead attendant. Sophie caught only a fragment. "She's here." Her heart thudded in her ears. She clutched Echo tightly, the bear's paw pressing against her chest. Her mind screamed to do something, stand, shout, run, but her father's voice echoed back from memory. "Don't run. Watch." So she watched. The captain's voice didn't return. The flight continued as if nothing had happened. But the air felt different, now heavy, electric, charged with something hidden. Minutes passed. Sophie pretended to look out the window while her eyes flicked to their reflections in the glass. She could see everyone. The man in 11A pretending to sleep, but watching her through half-closed lids. The flight attendant checking her phone too often. The old woman across the aisle glancing at her bear. Something was happening, and Sophie was in the middle of it. A drop of sweat rolled down her temple. She brushed it away, forcing herself to breathe slowly. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she misheard. Maybe the pilot's words weren't about her. But deep inside, she knew better. That word echo had been buried in her life like a secret waiting to wake. And now it had. The intercom crackled again, startling her. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. We're expecting a patch of turbulence." The lights dimmed. The engines roared louder. Sophie's stomach clenched. The man in 11A adjusted his seatbelt, still watching her. His hand brushed something metallic inside his jacket. Too deliberate, too controlled. Sophie's breath hitched. The flight attendants moved briskly, securing carts, locking compartments. The red-headed one passed by Sophie, leaning down slightly. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" she asked softly, her tone too gentle. Sophie nodded, unable to speak. The woman's eyes flicked to the bear, then to Sophie's face, and lingered just a moment too long before she walked away. Then, as the plane shuddered under the first wave of turbulence, Sophie felt it again, the unmistakable certainty that she wasn't just a passenger on Flight 247. Someone had planned this. Someone knew who she was. And someone somewhere in the cockpit had just spoken the words that could change her life forever. She turned to the window, clutching Echo so tightly her knuckles whitened. Outside, lightning flashed across the horizon, illuminating the clouds in violent bursts of white and silver. The engines groaned. The plane trembled, but inside her, a strange calm was rising. Her father's words echoed once more. "If anyone says your code name, don't run. Watch who reacts first." She inhaled deeply and whispered, so quietly only the bear could hear, "Okay, Dad. I'm watching." The plane trembled again as it cut through thick clouds, the lights flickering like candle flames in a storm. The captain's voice didn't return. For a long while, there was only the sound of air rushing past the windows and the dull mechanical hum of the engines. Sophie sat motionless in row 9, her small hands wrapped tightly around her bear. Her heart refused to calm down. Every beat felt like a reminder that she wasn't safe. Not here, not anywhere. She tried to steady her breathing, counting the seconds between each jolt of turbulence. But the voice, the one that said, "Eco 9, kept replaying in her mind, word for word, tone for tone. It wasn't a mistake. It couldn't be. Outside, lightning illuminated the cabin in brief flashes. Passengers gasped each time the plane dipped. The mother in row 8, whispered prayers into her baby's hair. The businessman behind Sophie cursed under his breath about the weather. To them, it was just another bumpy flight. To Sophie, it was something else entirely. She pressed her forehead against the cold window and closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, memories flickered like broken film reels. Her father's face lit by a single lamp, his voice trembling as he spoke in code to someone on the phone. Her mother packing bags in silence. The sound of helicopters outside. And the final moment her father crouched before her, his hands shaking as he pulled the bare Echo from a drawer and pressed it into her arms. "Keep this with you, Sophie. Always." "But it's just a toy," she'd whispered. "It's more than that," he'd said. "If you ever hear someone call you Echo 9, it means the past found you. And when that happens, watch carefully. Someone will show their face." Then he kissed her forehead, turned, and disappeared into the night as red lights flashed through the window. Sophie opened her eyes, her reflection staring back at her in the glass pale, frightened, older than 12 should look. She wasn't supposed to remember all that. But the storm had woken something in her. The plane jolted again, snapping her back to the present. Her juice cup spilled, a few drops staining the magazine on her tray table. She dabbed at it with a napkin, trying to look normal, calm, just another passenger waiting for the weather to clear. But her eyes kept darting to the aisle, searching for anyone acting strange. That's when she noticed the flight attendant again, the one with auburn hair and the polished smile. The woman was standing near the cockpit curtain, whispering to the co-pilot. Her voice was hushed, but Sophie caught pieces. "She's too young. No, she doesn't know." "Orders were clear," the co-pilot muttered back. Sophie's stomach tightened. They were talking about her. She knew it. A shadow crossed her row, another attendant, passing by with a calm expression, checking seatbelts. Sophie looked up, and for a split second, their eyes met. The woman's smile faltered. Then she turned away, continuing down the aisle, but Sophie noticed the way her fingers brushed against her earpiece, as if sending a silent signal. Sophie's instincts screamed. Her father had taught her once how to read people not with words, but with their eyes, their movements. The flight crew wasn't relaxed. They were hiding something. The seatbelt sign blinked off again. Passengers loosened their belts, grateful the turbulence was fading. A man in a gray suit 2 rows back stood and stretched, moving down the aisle toward the lavatory. Sophie noticed him because of how deliberate he was. He didn't stumble like the others. He moved like someone trained not to. She turned her head slightly, pretending to look at the safety card, but she watched him through the reflection in the window. His gaze wasn't casual, it lingered on her as he passed. And in that instant, she saw the outline of something metallic clipped inside his jacket pocket. A badge? A gun? She couldn't tell. Her pulse spiked. She forced herself to stay still, her fingers curling around Echo's paw until the stitches dug into her skin. The man entered the lavatory, shutting the door quietly. Sophie exhaled shakily. She didn't know who he was, but she could feel it in her bones. He was connected to the code. She thought of unbuckling her seatbelt, of running to the cockpit, of demanding answers from the pilot who'd said her name. But her father's warning kept echoing through her mind. Don't run. If she panicked, they'd see her as a threat. If she waited, maybe she'd learn who to trust. The red-headed attendant returned, leaning slightly toward her. "Are you okay, honey?" She asked again, her tone gentle but watchful. "You look a little pale." Sophie nodded quickly. "Just airsick," she said. Her voice sounded smaller than she meant it to. The woman smiled, but her eyes flicked once more to the stuffed bear on Sophie's lap. "That's a nice toy," she said softly. "What's its name?" "Echo," Sophie replied before she could stop herself. The woman froze, just for a heartbeat, then smiled again, tighter this time. That's a sweet name. She walked away before Sophie could say anything else. Sophie's blood ran cold. That pause, just 1 second, was all the confirmation she needed. The attendant knew. Her breathing quickened. She turned her attention toward the cockpit. The curtain was still drawn, the pilot's shadow moving behind it. She couldn't see his face, but she could feel his eyes on her somehow, as though he was waiting for her to understand something. The intercom crackled again, but this time only static came through. Then silence. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but she bit her lip until she tasted blood. She needed to think. She needed to act smart, the way her father would have. She looked down at her bear. There was a small seam under its left ear, newer stitch she hadn't noticed before. Her fingers itched to pull it open, to see what was inside. But not now. Not with eyes watching. A flicker of lightning flashed again outside the window, reflecting a brief image of the man from row 11 as he returned from the lavatory. He looked calm, composed, but when he sat, Sophie caught him glancing at his watch and muttering something under his breath. She couldn't hear the words, but she saw his lips move. Target located. Her stomach turned to ice. She ducked slightly, pretending to grab something from her backpack, but her thoughts were racing. Who was he? Who were they? And why did they need her? Suddenly, the plane dipped again. Gasps filled the cabin. Oxygen masks swung from the ceiling. The captain's voice came through, strained and urgent. Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts immediately. This is not a drill. The cabin erupted in noise panic, crying, confusion. Sophie strapped herself in, heart pounding. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the man in row 11 tap his watch twice, his expression sharpening. Then the flight attendant, the red-headed one, walked swiftly toward the cockpit, whispered something to the pilot, and vanished behind the curtain. Sophie gripped the bear tighter. The voice that came over the speaker next wasn't calm anymore. It was raw, shaking, desperate. "Echo," the captain said, voice cracking slightly. "They found you. Don't trust the uniforms." Then the intercom went dead. Sophie stared at the speaker above her head, breath frozen in her throat. The passengers shouted questions, calling for the crew. No one answered. And in that deafening moment, between lightning flashes and screams, Sophie finally understood. The message wasn't for the passengers at all. It was for her. The cabin had fallen into uneasy silence after the captain's last haunting message. The seatbelt signs glowed red, the oxygen masks still dangling like ghosts from the ceiling. The storm outside battered the plane with heavy fists of wind, lightning flashing against the windows. Sophie sat perfectly still in row 9, clutching her bear so tightly it hurt. Don't trust the uniforms. The captain's warning echoed through her head. She turned her gaze toward the aisle. Every flight attendant wore a uniform. But there was something else. Someone else. 2 rows back, the man in 11A hadn't moved since the announcement. His posture was calm, composed for someone in the middle of chaos. Most passengers were whispering prayers, fumbling with masks, or scrolling through their phones for comfort. But not him. He just sat there, watching. Sophie remembered the faint movement of his lips earlier. Target located. Now she was sure of it. He knew. She adjusted slightly in her seat, pretending to reach for her backpack. From the corner of her eye, she caught his reflection in the window. He was looking straight at her. Their eyes met through the reflection, his steady, hers wide and frightened. He didn't look away. Her heart pounded in her chest, the rhythm syncing with the distant rumble of thunder. Then, slowly, the man rose from his seat. Sophie's grip on the bear tightened. Her mind screamed at her to stay calm, to remember her father's warning. Watch who reacts first. The man stepped into the aisle, steadying himself against the turbulence. Passengers barely noticed. Everyone was too distracted by fear. He walked toward the front, toward her row. Her breath hitched. When he reached row 9, he stopped beside her seat and crouched slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Don't panic," he said quietly. "My name's Turner. I'm here to help you." Sophie blinked. His voice was calm, steady, practiced the kind of tone adults used when trying to earn a child's trust. But his eyes, they told another story. They were the eyes of someone who'd seen too much. She didn't respond. She just stared at him, studying every detail, the faint scar near his temple, the earpiece hidden under his collar, the faint outline of a badge inside his jacket. Turner noticed her gaze and sighed. "You're smarter than they said," he murmured. "Good. You'll need to be. Who are you?" She finally whispered. "I told you. Turner. Cole Turner." "That's not an answer," Sophie said. His eyes flicked to the cockpit door, where the red-headed flight attendant had disappeared minutes ago. "We don't have time. The people up there, they're not who you think they are. The captain, he's breaking orders to keep you alive." Sophie's throat tightened. "Then why did he say my code name out loud?" Turner looked at her, and for the first time, his expression cracked. "Because he's running out of time," he said softly. "And so are we." The plane jolted again, violently this time. Gasps erupted from passengers. Overhead compartments popped open, bags tumbling into the aisle. The lights flickered, plunging the cabin into brief darkness. Sophie's instincts screamed. Something bigger was happening than just turbulence. Turner grabbed the seat in front of him and steadied himself. "Listen to me, Echo. Don't call me that," she snapped. He nodded once. "Fine, Sophie. You have something they want. Something you don't even know you're carrying." "What are you talking about?" "The project your parents worked on, the reason they disappeared. They hid it inside you. Encrypted data, locked biologically. You're the only living key left." Sophie stared at him, her mind spinning. "That's insane, is it?" He said. "You remember the night they vanished? You remember what your father said?" Her heart skipped. "If anyone says your code name, don't run. Watch who reacts first." "How do you know about that?" She whispered. "Because I was there." The air left her lungs. "You're lying. I wish I were." Before she could speak again, the intercom cracked, and a voice not the captain's came through. It was the red-headed attendant. "All agents to the cockpit. Repeat, all agents to the cockpit." The words froze the blood in Sophie's veins. Turner's eyes hardened. "Stay behind me," he ordered, pulling something from his jacket, a small silver device that looked like a phone crossed with a radio. Passengers were panicking now, whispering to each other, asking what was happening. But the storm drowned their voices. The plane shook violently, a flash of lightning flooding the cabin in white. Sophie's seatbelt dug into her chest. She tried to stay calm, but her thoughts were spinning. Agents. If the flight attendants were agents, then who was the pilot? Who could she trust? Turner leaned closer. "The pilot's one of us. He's trying to divert the flight. But they've taken control from ground command. They'll force a landing before he can get you to safety." "Safety?" She repeated, her voice trembling. "Where is that?" "Anywhere but here." He handed her the small device. "If anything happens to me, press the green button. It'll send a signal." "To who?" "Someone who owes your parents everything." Before she could respond, the cockpit door burst open. The red-headed flight attendant emerged, her face pale and her uniform torn. "Cole," she shouted. "They've locked the captain out." Turner's expression darkened. "Who did?" "Ground control. The autopilot's overriding his system. He's trying to fight it, but The plane dropped suddenly, a stomach-twisting plunge. Passengers screamed. Trays and cups flew through the air. Sophie's head slammed against the seat in front of her, stars exploding in her vision. Turner caught her arm just before she fell into the aisle. "Hold on," he shouted. The lights flickered again. Sparks flew from an overhead panel. Sophie looked toward the cockpit and saw something that made her blood run cold. Two men in dark tactical gear forcing their way through the forward entrance, their weapons glinting under the flashing lights. Federal security. One barked. Everyone remained seated, but Turner pulled her backward, crouching behind the seats. "They're not feds," he hissed. "They're private contractors. Black Ridge Division. They're here for you." Sophie's breath came in short, sharp bursts. "How do you know?" "Because I used to be one of them." Another jolt shook the plane. One of the masked men raised a weapon toward the cockpit. A gunshot cracked through the air, deafening. Passengers screamed, ducking. Sophie's entire body went rigid. The sound seemed to echo forever. Turner's jaw clenched. "It's starting." He grabbed her hand and pulled her into the narrow space between rows. "We need to get below deck," he said. "Cargo hold. There's an access hatch near the rear galley. It's the only place they won't look first." "Why should I trust you?" she whispered. He turned, eyes blazing with urgency. "Because, kid, your parents trusted me. And because right now, I'm the only one who doesn't want to deliver you to them." Another flash of lightning blinded her. Then the emergency lights flicked red, bathing the cabin in a blood-colored glow. Sophie hesitated for a heartbeat, her mind torn between fear and instinct. But then she looked down at the bear in her arms, her father's last gift, and remembered his voice. "If anyone says your code name, don't run. Watch who reacts first." And the first person who had reacted was Turner. Not with surprise, not with confusion, but with understanding. She took a breath and nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'm coming with you." Turner nodded once. "Good girl." They slipped past the rows as the chaos grew louder, passengers crying, alarms blaring, the storm raging outside like a beast trying to tear the plane apart. Sophie glanced back one last time toward the cockpit. Through the shattered window, she caught a glimpse of the pilot struggling with one of the attackers. His eyes met hers for half a second, pleading, desperate, and he mouthed something she barely caught. "Find the truth." Then the door slammed shut. Turner pulled her down the aisle as another explosion of thunder roared through the sky. The lights died completely. The world turned to darkness and noise and motion. And somewhere deep inside the storm, a frightened 12-year-old girl named Sophie Miller realized her life would never, ever be ordinary again. The plane trembled like a living creature caught between life and death. The storm outside had turned monstrous lightning ripped across the clouds, thunder rolling like cannon fire. Passengers screamed and prayed, their voices swallowed by the chaos. But in the narrow, flickering aisle, Sophie and Turner were ghosts in motion. "Stay low," he whispered. "Don't draw attention." Sophie crawled behind him, clutching the small silver device he had given her. Her fingers trembled, slick with sweat. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to stop, but her mind kept repeating one thing: keep moving. Turner's eyes darted toward the front of the cabin. The two armed men were still advancing, shouting orders, their weapons scanning the seats. The red-headed flight attendant was gone, dragged toward the cockpit minutes earlier. "They're clearing rows," Turner murmured. "They'll reach us in less than a minute." He pushed open the curtain, separating economy from the galley. The flickering emergency lights painted everything in crimson shadows. Metal carts rolled freely with each lurch of the aircraft, and the scent of spilled coffee mingled with ozone and panic. "There," Turner said, pointing to a metal panel on the floor. Maintenance hatch. Sophie crouched beside him as he pried it open with a small multi-tool. The metal groaned, resisting. "Hurry," she whispered, glancing back. Footsteps echoed closer. The masked men were methodical, checking every row. Sophie could hear the faint static of their earpieces and the clipped tone of an unseen commander. Echo signal confirmed. Retrieve the asset alive. Her blood froze. Echo signal. They were talking about her. Turner's jaw tightened. "They've locked onto you." Damn it. He slammed the tool into the edge of the hatch. It popped open with a sharp metallic snap. Cold air rushed out, a mix of oil, steel, and pressurized oxygen. "Go," he ordered. Sophie hesitated, staring into the black hole below. "What's down there?" "Cargo deck," he said. "And maybe a way out of this nightmare." She swallowed hard and slipped through the opening. The metal was cold under her palms as she climbed down the narrow ladder. Her heart pounded like a drum in her ears. Turner followed, pulling the hatch closed above them just as voices shouted from the galley. "Search here." She was seen near row 9. Darkness swallowed them whole. Sophie's foot hit the deck below. She stumbled, steadying herself on a crate marked with a strange symbol, an eagle's wing split in two. Turner landed beside her, quietly sealing the hatch. For a moment, neither spoke. The only sounds were the hum of the engines and the distant roar of the storm. Then Turner pulled out a small flashlight, covering most of the beam with his hand. A soft glow illuminated the space rows of cargo containers, sealed crates, and a maze of machinery humming with quiet power. "Stay close," he said, leading her deeper into the hold. Sophie followed, the beam of light bouncing across boxes marked restricted material, federal use only. She felt the floor vibrating beneath her, steady, mechanical. The plane's heart. "What are we looking for?" she asked. "A comport," Turner said. "Something I can reroute. If I can break through their interference, I can contact the pilot directly." Sophie looked around nervously. "And if they find us first?" "Then I make sure they don't take you alive," he said quietly. Her chest tightened. "You're not helping. Didn't mean to." He found a control panel against the wall and pried it open, exposing a cluster of flickering lights and tangled wires. "Keep watch," he said, pulling a small cable from his pocket. "This will take a minute." Sophie crouched beside a crate, peeking toward the hatch above. Every sound felt amplified, the rattle of the fuselage, the groan of the metal, the faint murmur of voices above. Her eyes wandered to a nearby label on one of the containers. "Property of Black Ridge Industries. Biological storage. Handle with care." Her pulse quickened. "Turner," she whispered. "These boxes, they're from the same company that took my parents." He didn't look up. "I know. You knew?" "They funded the project. The encryption program your parents built. They thought it was just a data lock, something to protect intelligence records. But it was more than that. It could hide living code, genetic memory. The kind that can't be erased." Her stomach turned. "You're saying my father used it on you," Turner said. His voice softened, almost regretful. "He hid their research inside your DNA. That's why they can't kill you. You're the only key left." The realization hit like a physical blow. Her knees went weak. "Why me?" "Because he trusted no one else." She didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. Probably both. Before she could respond, a muffled thud echoed above them, the sound of boots on metal. Turner froze. They found the hatch. He killed the flashlight and grabbed her hand. "Move!" They darted between crates as the hatch above screeched open. A beam of light sliced through the darkness. Voices followed. "Search the hold." "She's down here." Turner pulled Sophie behind a stack of containers, crouching low. She could hear her heartbeat pounding, louder than the engines. One of the men jumped down, his flashlight sweeping across the deck. Another followed, their boots clanging against the floor. Turner pressed a finger to his lips and whispered, "Run when I say." Sophie nodded, trembling. The beam of light grew closer. She could hear one of the men mutter, "She's just a kid. Why do they care so much?" The other replied coldly, "Because that kid could expose everything." Suddenly, Turner stood up and threw a metal wrench across the room. It clattered loudly against the far wall. The guards turned instantly. "Over there." Turner grabbed Sophie's arm. "Now." They ran. The cargo bay exploded into chaos, yelling, gunfire, sparks flying from ricocheting bullets. Turner shoved open a maintenance door at the far end and pushed her through. They stumbled into a narrow corridor filled with pipes and steam, the roar of the engines deafening. Sophie gasped for breath. "Where are we going?" "Engine bay," he shouted. "There's an emergency transceiver near the left turbine. If we can reach it." A bullet slammed into the wall beside them, showering sparks. Turner ducked, pulling her down behind a console. "Stay here," he ordered. He leaned out, firing 2 precise shots from a small pistol. One guard dropped. The other ducked for cover. Sophie flinched, her hands over her ears. "You said you weren't military." "I said I used to be," he said grimly. The plane lurched again, pitching downward. Both of them tumbled forward, crashing into a railing. Sophie felt her stomach twist. The aircraft was descending. Fast. Turner checked a nearby gauge, his face draining of color. "They're forcing us down. We're losing altitude. Can't the pilot stop it?" "He's locked out." The floor tilted, throwing them sideways. Sophie screamed, grabbing a pipe for balance. Turner caught her arm again, dragging her toward a small metal door marked emergency access. Authorized personnel only. He slammed it open and pointed inside. "Go. It leads to the avionics bay." She hesitated. "What about you?" "I'll hold them off." "No." He gave her a half-smile. "You've got your father's fire. Don't waste it." Another burst of gunfire shattered the panel above them. Sparks rained down like fireworks. Turner pushed her inside and slammed the door behind her. Sophie stumbled through the darkness, tears streaming down her cheeks. The roar of the engines filled her head. Then she heard it through the metal walls, faint but clear. The captain's voice, breaking through static. "Echo, this is Captain Warren. If you can hear me, you're not alone." She froze, clutching the silver device in her palm. It glowed faintly, pulsing in sync with his voice. "I'm rerouting power to the rear systems. There's something you need to see, something your parents left behind." Her breath caught. "Mom? Dad?" "Find the black case in the avionics bay," the captain's voice said. "It'll explain everything." The signal cut out. Sophie looked up. In the dim urgency light, she saw a black metal case wedged between 2 control panels. She wiped her tears, stepped forward, and whispered to herself, "Find the truth." Then she opened it. Inside, a single object gleamed in the half-light, a silver drive, engraved with her initials. The hum of the plane was deeper, now more strained, more human, as though the jet itself was fighting to stay alive. Sparks danced across the ceiling of the avionics bay, while Sophie stared at the small silver drive glowing faintly in her hand. Her initials were etched into its side in her father's handwriting. SM. For a long, breathless moment, she couldn't move. Her father's voice filled her memory, calm, protective, the way he used to sound when explaining impossible things. "If you ever find something with your name, Sophie, it's meant for you and only you. Don't let anyone else touch it." Her fingers trembled. She brushed the dust from the casing. Noticing a small porch, shaped like the connector on the device Turner had given her earlier. When she plugged them together, a faint blue light pulsed, and then the device spoke. Echo protocol initiated. Sophie flinched. The voice wasn't human, it was her mother's, recorded, but distorted through static. Sophie, if you're hearing this, it means we didn't make it. Her heart twisted. We created something powerful, something the world wasn't ready for. It wasn't meant to be a weapon. It was supposed to protect truth, to preserve memory. But they wanted to use it for control. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Mom, Black Ridge took everything. They turned on us when we refused to cooperate. Your father, he hid the encryption key inside you. We didn't have a choice. You were the only one they'd never suspect. The words hit like a tidal wave. Sophie pressed a hand over her mouth, trying not to sob. If you found this, you're close to the end, sweetheart. But you must trust only one voice, the pilot, Warren. He worked with us once. He knows how to finish this. There was a pause, then a final trembling whisper. We love you, always. The recording ended. Sophie sat there in the humming dark, the faint glow of the device flickering like a heartbeat in her hands. Her tears fell freely now, hot, unstoppable. The truth was both salvation and punishment. Her parents hadn't abandoned her. They'd sacrificed everything to keep her alive. She didn't notice the footsteps until they were too close. A shadow fell over her. Found you. The voice was male low, smooth, with that same unnatural calmness she'd heard through the crew's earpieces. Sophie turned, her pulse spiking. One of the masked men stood at the threshold, gun raised. Behind him, another climbed through the maintenance hatch. Sophie stumbled backward, clutching the drive. Give it to me, kid, the man said, his tone almost gentle. You don't even know what you're holding. Her back hit a control panel. Her mind raced. Turner's gunshots echoed faintly from somewhere deeper in the plane. He was still fighting. But he was far. Too far. She lifted the silver device slightly. If you want it, she said, her voice shaking but strong, you'll have to come take it. The man's eyes flicked with amusement. Wrong answer. He took a step forward. And that was when the plane lurched violently, sending him crashing into the wall. The lights flickered red, and a shrill alarm blared through the cabin descent warning, flashing on every nearby screen. Sophie fell to her knees, gripping the console for balance. The drive slipped from her hand and clattered under a metal grate. No, she shouted, scrambling for it. The masked man cursed, trying to regain footing as gravity shifted again. Loose tools slid across the floor like bullets. Then the intercom crackled to life. This is Captain Warren, the voice said, strained and urgent. We're going down. Brace for impact, repeat. Brace for impact. The words sent chills through her. But amid the chaos, Sophie spotted the silver drive lodged beneath the grated floor. She reached for it, fingers brushing the cold metal, just as the man grabbed her arm. Let go. She screamed. Sorry, kid. Mission comes first. He pulled her back, his grip iron tight. Sophie twisted, kicked, fought with all the strength her small frame could muster. The plane's roar drowned everything. And then an explosion of light and sound as the cockpit door blew open. Turner burst through, face bloodied, gun in hand. Let her go, he shouted. The man turned too late. Turner fired once. The bullet hit the wall beside the man's head, ricocheting into his shoulder. He staggered backward, shouting in pain, and Sophie wrenched free, diving toward the grate. She pried up the loose panel, grabbed the silver drive, and turned to see Turner charging forward. He tackled the wounded man to the floor. The second assailant lifted his weapon, but Sophie, without thinking, hurled the flashlight she'd been holding. It struck his wrist, the shot went wild, and Turner took him down in 2 swift blows. The world tilted again. The plane was nosediving now, alarms screaming, lights strobing red and white. Turner pulled Sophie to her feet. "We're out of time," he shouted over the chaos. "Warren's trying to crash us before they can take you." Her mind spun. Crash us? Why? To erase the data. If you die, it dies with you. No, she cried, shaking her head. There has to be another way. He grabbed her shoulders. Then you find it. Turner shoved her toward the control console, where the silver drive's light pulsed faster. She realized what it was doing. It was syncing to the plane's systems. Her mother's last words echoed in her mind. He knows how to finish this. She took a deep breath and pressed the glowing button on the device. A beam of light projected upward, forming a holographic interface in the air codes, maps, data streams. "What the hell is that?" Turner shouted. "My mom called it the Guardian Protocol," Sophie said, scanning the lines of code. "If I can decrypt it, I can override the crash. Can you do that?" "I don't know." She typed furiously, her small hands flying across the keys as the plane shuddered. The engine's roar deepened. One had already failed. "Altitude 12,000 feet, the automated system warned. The display flickered. Then, through the holographic storm of code, her father's face appeared faint, like a ghost. "Sophie?" Her breath caught. "Dad? You're doing well, sweetheart. You found the key." The figure looked toward the screen, eyes calm but urgent. "You have one choice. Save yourself, or save what we built. If the Guardian uploads now, it'll expose everything they've hidden. But it'll also make you their target forever." Sophie hesitated, tears blurring her vision. "What would you do?" "I'd choose the truth." The hologram faded. "Sophie," Turner yelled. 10 seconds. She looked down at the drive, its light burning brighter, trembling with power. Then she pressed the final command. Upload initiated. The plane jolted violently, but the descent slowed slightly. Screens across the cockpit blinked with the same message. Data transmission in progress. Black Ridge files compromised. Turner looked out the cracked window. "You did it." But then the voice of Captain Warren came through again, this time broken, distorted by static. "Sophie, good girl, but it's not over yet. Brace yourself." The last thing she saw before impact was the blue light of the drive flaring like a star, and Turner throwing his arms around her as everything went white. When she opened her eyes, silence. Smoke curled through the wreckage. The plane had torn through a field, somewhere in the mountains. The sky was pale gold, dawn breaking. Sophie coughed, body aching. Turner lay beside her, bleeding but alive. Far ahead, the cockpit was in ruins. The pilot's seat was empty. And in the wreckage, the silver drive still glowed steady, alive, waiting. The world was silent when Sophie opened her eyes. Too silent. The smoke that drifted through the broken fuselage shimmered in thin ribbons, glowing softly in the early dawn. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cried, the first sound of life after the storm. Sophie coughed, dust and metal filling her lungs. Her fingers twitched, brushing something solid beside her. Turner. He lay motionless, half buried under a twisted seat frame, his face smeared with blood and soot. "Turner?" Her voice was barely a whisper. She reached out, shaking him weakly. "Hey, wake up." For a terrifying moment, he didn't move. Then his hand twitched, and a faint groan escaped his lips. "Sophie?" She exhaled shakily, tears welling up. "You're alive." "Barely," he rasped, wincing as he tried to sit up. Where the hell are we?" Sophie glanced around. The cabin was a skeletal ruin, Seats torn apart, wires hanging like vines, smoke curling from sparking consoles. Through the shattered fuselage, she could see open sky and endless pine-covered slopes stretching into the horizon. "We made it out," she said, voice trembling. "The plane went down, but we're still here." Turner grunted, forcing himself to his feet. "Then we don't have all?" Sophie frowned. "What do you mean?" He turned toward her, his face hard and serious. "Black Ridge. They'll know the crash site by now. Satellites, trackers, transponders. They'll send cleanup crews to retrieve what's left of the Guardian system. And you?" Sophie's stomach twisted. "So they'll come for me?" "They'll come for everything," he said. "And they won't leave witnesses." Her fingers instinctively reached for the silver drive. It was still there, cracked, dented, but faintly glowing. She slipped it into her pocket and zipped it shut. "Then we run." Turner gave a grim nod. "We run." They climbed out of the wreckage, boots crunching over broken glass and debris. The cold mountain air hit them like a slap, thin, sharp, alive. The morning sun was only just rising, painting the snow-dusted peaks gold. For a moment, Sophie turned back. The wrecked plane lay smoking in the clearing, a twisted skeleton surrounded by scattered luggage and pieces of metal. It looked peaceful now, like something ancient that had simply fallen asleep. She whispered under her breath, "Thank you, Captain Warren." Turner looked at her, brow furrowed. "What?" "Nothing," she said softly. They started down a narrow slope, moving through dense pine and fog. Each step was slow and painful. Turner's limp worsened with every mile, his side bleeding through the fabric of his jacket. Sophie tore a strip from her sleeve and pressed it to the wound. "You need a doctor," she said. He smirked faintly. "You volunteering?" "Not funny. Didn't mean it to be." She glared, but couldn't hide her worry. His skin was pale, his breath shallow. But his eyes, those soldiers' eyes, were sharp, scanning every sound, every shadow. Hours passed. The terrain grew steeper. The forest thickened into a labyrinth of fog and cold stone. They stopped near a fallen log to rest. Sophie's body ached, her stomach growling. She'd never gone this long without food or water. Turner handed her a small flask. "Last of it," he said. She took a sip, grimacing at the metallic taste. "So what now?" "We head east," he said. "There's a ranger station about 20 miles out. If we can reach it before they do, maybe we can send a signal." Sophie nodded, though the distance sounded impossible. "And if we don't?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched until the faint buzz of an engine broke it. Sophie froze. Turner's head snapped up. "Get down." They dropped behind the log as a drone passed overhead, black, sleek, silent, except for a faint mechanical whir. Its red sensor lights swept over the treetops. "Recon unit," Turner whispered. "They're close." The drone hovered, scanning the wreckage below. Then its light turned toward the forest, toward them. "Run!" Turner shouted. They bolted, branches whipping their faces, boots slamming against the frozen ground. The drone's sensors flickered like a crimson eye chasing them through the trees. Gunfire cracked in the distance, short bursts methodical. Turner grabbed Sophie's hand, pulling her down a steep embankment. They slid through mud and snow, crashing into a shallow creek. Sophie gasped, the water freezing against her skin. Turner pulled her up, half carrying her toward a cluster of rocks. They dove behind them as the drone's beam passed overhead again, scanning the creek, then veering off. Sophie shivered uncontrollably, hugging herself for warmth. Turner pressed his back to the rock, breathing hard. "That was just a scout," he said grimly. "Ground teams will follow." She looked up at him, eyes wide with fear. Then what do we do? He met her gaze. We disappear. They followed the creek downstream, moving silently, stepping only where the water covered their tracks. Turner taught her how to read the forest, how to move without sound, how to listen for the rhythm of a hunter's approach. You're too calm, Sophie whispered at one point. How are you not terrified? He gave a weary half-smile. I've been hunted before. The weight in his voice told her not to ask further. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking a valley. Smoke still rose from the crash site, distant but visible. Several dark figures moved below, soldiers in tactical armor sweeping the wreckage. Sophie's breath hitched. They found it. Turner peered through a cracked pair of binoculars. They're securing the drive. Or trying to. Sophie blinked. But I have the drive. He lowered the binoculars slowly. Then what the hell are they after? Her hand went instinctively to her pocket. The silver device pulsed faintly, almost in rhythm with her heartbeat. Suddenly, the connection made sense. They're tracking me, she whispered. The signal's coming from the drive. Turner's expression hardened. Give it to me. No, she said instantly. It's all I have left of them. Sophie, no. Her voice cracked. It's my family, Turner. My parents died for this. He hesitated, then sighed. I know. But if that signal keeps pinging, they'll never stop. Not until they find you. Sophie looked down at the glowing device. Every instinct screamed against it. But she could hear the whine of engines in the distance. Helicopters. She swallowed hard, her hands trembling. What if I just throw it? Won't matter. The code's bonded to you now. Your DNA, remember? It's not just a key, Sophie. You are the key. The truth hit her like a punch. Before she could respond, the sound of rotor blades grew deafening. 2 black helicopters appeared over the ridge, spotlights cutting through the fog. Move! Turner shouted. They sprinted downhill as the forest erupted around them, bullets tearing through branches, dirt exploding in bursts of dust. Sophie ducked, screaming as a tree splintered beside her. Turner fired upward, forcing the nearest chopper to swerve. Keep running. They broke into a clearing near a narrow ravine. Turner grabbed her hand and pointed. Jump! She froze. The ravine was deep, filled with rushing water and jagged stone. Now, Sophie. She jumped. The world became water, cold and furious, dragging her under. The current pulled her like a living thing, spinning her through darkness and foam. She fought, kicking, clawing upward until she broke the surface, gasping for air. Turner surfaced beside her, bleeding from his arm. Go with the current. He shouted. It'll hide our trail. They drifted, the river carrying them through the canyon like ghosts. When they finally crawled onto a muddy bank miles downstream, both were trembling and exhausted. Sophie lay on her back, staring at the sky. We can't keep running forever, she whispered. Turner looked at her with something almost like pride. We don't have to. We just need to reach someone who believes the truth. Sophie turned her head. Who? He hesitated, and said quietly, There's one person left from your parents' team. A whistleblower. She vanished years ago, off-grid. If she's still alive, she can finish what your family started. Sophie frowned. What's her name? Turner looked out toward the horizon. Dr. Evelyn Shaw. The name sent a jolt through Sophie's memory. Her father had mentioned it once, in hushed tones, long ago. She sat up slowly, determination hardening her face. Then we find her. Turner smiled faintly. That's the spirit. He looked down the valley, where the mist was thinning and the sun was breaking through. For the first time since the crash, there was light ahead. But deep in the forest behind them, a soldier's radio crackled. Command, echo signal reacquired. Repeat, Echo signal active. Begin pursuit. The hunt wasn't over. The forest changed as the sun began to sink. What had once been a wall of green now shimmered gold and orange, every leaf seeming to burn in the light. Sophie and Turner moved silently, their clothes still damp, every breath visible in the mountain air. They hadn't spoken much since the river. Exhaustion had taken over, but beneath it lay something else. Fear, the kind that grew quieter the longer it stayed, until it turned into instinct. Sophie glanced back every few steps, half expecting to see men in black armor bursting through the trees. But there was only the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a hawk. "Are we close?" she whispered. Turner stopped, studying the battered map he'd salvaged from his vest pocket. "Close is a relative word," he said. "Shaw's last known coordinates are 20 miles north of here, near the old hydro station. But it's been years. She could have gone deeper." Sophie frowned. "Deeper where?" He folded the map. "Off-grid? Underground? Maybe even overseas. But Shaw's too smart to leave the country. She'd stay near her work." They started walking again. Each step crunched through frost, every sound amplified by the silence. After an hour, the forest opened into a clearing, revealing a weathered cabin perched beside a dried-up creek. Sophie froze. That can't be her place, can it? Turner crouched low, eyes scanning the area. Could be. Or it could be a trap. The cabin looked abandoned, windows shattered, porch collapsing, ivy crawling up its walls like veins. But something about it felt wrong. The quiet was too complete, the air too still. Sophie whispered, "I'll check inside." "No," Turner said sharply. "I go first." He approached slowly, gun drawn, every step deliberate. He reached the door and pushed it open with the barrel. It creaked, a long, slow groan. Inside, dust motes floated in beams of fading light. The air smelled like mold and machine oil. Old books lay scattered on the floor. A cracked photo frame hung crooked on the wall. A woman with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Turner scanned the corners, then lowered his weapon. Clear. Sophie stepped in behind him, curiosity overtaking fear. She brushed her fingers across a dusty desk, littered with old schematics and yellowing documents. One page caught her eye, a blueprint stamped with a symbol she'd seen before, the Guardian sigil, an eagle holding a sphere of light. Her breath hitched. "Turner, look at this." He came over, eyes narrowing. "These are Guardian protocols. Early designs. She worked on this years before it went public." Sophie traced the lines on the page. It's like she was trying to rewrite it to make it safer. Turner found a notebook buried under a pile of files. The pages were filled with equations and scrawled notes. One entry stood out, circled in red ink. The system must never recognize the echo without consent. If it bonds prematurely, the child will carry the signal, and the world will follow. Sophie read it twice, her heart pounding. "Echo, that's me." Turner looked at her, realization dawning. "Your parents and Shaw, they didn't just build Guardian. They built the failsafe. You were never just a test subject. You were the lock and the key." Her voice shook. "My dad said they created something to protect people, not control them." "He meant it," Turner said. "But someone twisted it. Black Ridge turned a safety system into a weapon. Guardian was supposed to detect threats before they happened, using patterns of behavior, emotions, even memories. But with you, they found a way to predict human intent." Sophie's knees went weak. She sank into a chair. "So the code in my blood, it's not just data. It's human empathy, emotion. That's what they were testing." Turner nodded grimly. "And that's what they lost when they took control of it. Guardian isn't safe anymore. Without you, It can't think. It just obeys. Sophie felt sick. So if they catch me, they'll reprogram you, or extract what's left of your DNA to complete their version. Either way, they win. A faint click echoed through the cabin. Turner's head snapped up. Down! Sophie dropped as a laser sight swept across the room. Turner fired through the wall. 1, 2, 3 shots. A body thudded outside. Then silence. He crawled to the window, peering out. 1 down. 2 more moving in. Sophie's pulse raced. How did they find us? He pointed to the notebook. She wrote her logs digitally. They might have traced the encryption key. Before he could say more, the back door exploded inward. Turner fired again, hitting one soldier square in the chest. The other lunged forward, tackling him to the floor. They struggled, fists and elbows slamming in violent rhythm. Sophie grabbed a metal rod and swung with everything she had. It connected with the soldier's helmet, a sharp crack. He fell limp. Turner groaned, catching his breath. Not bad, kid. She glared. Don't call me kid. He smirked despite the pain. Fair enough. They dragged the bodies outside and dumped them behind the cabin. Turner searched one of them, finding a small black transponder. They weren't scouting, he said. They were marking. Marking what? Us. Sophie felt panic rising again. Then we need to go. Now. He nodded. But first, he reached for the notebook. We take Shaw's notes. Whatever she discovered could still save you. They packed what they could. Blueprints, data drives, maps. Sophie tucked a small photo from the desk into her jacket. The same woman, Shaw, standing beside her father. Do you think she's still alive? Sophie asked quietly as they left the cabin. Turner looked back once, eyes unreadable. If she is, she's hiding somewhere no one would think to look. They hiked into the night, following the faint glimmer of a power line that ran north. The stars were sharp and endless above them. Sophie's mind spun with every step, fragments of memory returning, flashes of her parents whispering about E7, about hiding the child, about trust. She stopped suddenly. Turner. E to 7. Could that be Evelyn Shaw? He blinked. It's possible. The Guardian Project had numbered designations for its lead scientists. If E7 was her, then she was higher ranked than your father. Sophie shivered. Then maybe she was the one who started this. Turner didn't answer. His silence said enough. By midnight, the trees thinned again, revealing a concrete structure, half buried in the hillside. Massive steel doors, rusted but intact. Overgrown vines crawled across faded words. U.S. Hydro Station, Sector 9B. Sophie's eyes widened. This is it. Turner scanned the perimeter and knelt beside a panel. Power's dead. But if Shaw's still here, she have backup systems. He pried open a fuse box, crossed 2 wires, and sparks flickered to life. A low hum vibrated through the ground. The steel doors creaked and slowly parted. Cold air poured out, sterile, metallic. Inside, lights flickered one by one down a long corridor. Turner glanced at her. Stay close. They moved cautiously inside. The hall led to a massive control room filled with dust-covered terminals, glowing faintly from reserve power. On one screen, a line of text blinked repeatedly. Welcome back, Dr. Shaw. Sophie's heart pounded. She's alive. Turner stepped closer, scanning the monitor. Or she left something behind to make it look that way. Before they could react, a voice echoed through the speaker system. Calm, sharp, unmistakably human. I was wondering how long it would take you to find me, Sophie. Sophie froze. Dr. Shaw? You shouldn't have come here, the voice said softly. They're already tracking you. But since you have, we don't have much time. Sophie looked at Turner, terrified and confused. How do you know who I am? Because, child, the voice said, almost tenderly. I helped create you. The lights flickered, and a figure stepped into the glow at the far end of the room. White hair, thin frame, eyes sharp as steel. Dr. Evelyn Shaw was alive, and she'd been waiting for her. Sophie stepped into the control room, every nerve on fire. The metallic floor hummed beneath her boots. She kept the silver drive tight against her chest, as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. Turner followed, bleeding from his side, but alert. Dr. Evelyn Shaw stood at the far end, framed by flickering monitors, calm and impossible to read. Her eyes were sharp, almost predatory, but there was something in them, something almost maternal. So, Shaw said softly, voice echoing through the cavernous space. You finally found me. Sophie's heart pounded. You helped create me? Shaw nodded, taking a slow step forward. I did, along with your parents. You were never just a child. You were the key to Guardian. I made sure of it. Turner muttered under his breath. Great, another genius at a haunted lab. Sophie ignored him. Why? Why me? Why hide this in my DNA? Shaw's gaze softened. Because it was the only way. The system, Guardian, was designed to anticipate human decisions, detect threats before they happened. But without a fail-safe, it could become uncontrollable. Sophie's stomach churned. You mean Black Ridge? Yes, Shaw said. They took our work and turned it into a weapon. They wanted to predict people, control them. That's why your parents sacrificed themselves, to hide the key inside you. You carry the only uncorrupted version of Guardian. Sophie swallowed hard. Her hands shook around the silver drive. So, what happens now? Shaw's eyes darkened. Now, we decide whether the system lives or dies. Turner stepped forward. Wait, what? Sophie, it's up to her. Yes, Shaw said, turning to him. Guardian is bonded to her DNA. She is Echo, the living key. Whatever she decides, the system follows. Sophie's mind whirled. Her parents' voices, Turner's lessons, the captain's warning, every moment of terror and chaos led to this instant. Shaw gestured toward a console. The Guardian interface is open. You can release it to the world, or destroy it completely. But be warned, if you release it, Black Ridge will hunt you forever. And the system will learn from everything it observes, both good and bad. Sophie's pulse spiked. And if I destroy it? Then the system ends with you, Shaw said softly. Black Ridge loses their weapon, but the knowledge your parents left is gone forever. Guardian cannot be rebuilt without you. She looked at Turner. The choice is hers. Sophie knelt by the console, staring at lines of code scrolling across the holographic display. Each sequence was alive, pulsing, almost breathing. It wasn't just data. It was history, emotion, intelligence. Her parents' memory burned through her mind. Their whispers, their love, their sacrifice. Protect the truth, Sophie. Only you can finish this. Tears streamed down her face. The weight of the world rested on her shoulders. She touched the console, feeling the hum of the system under her fingertips. Guardian was more than a program. It was a conscience built by her parents' genius, encoded in her very DNA. A warning message appeared on the screen. Black Ridge satellites approaching. Estimated interception in 10 minutes. Sophie's chest tightened. She had to decide now. Turner placed a hand on her shoulder. Whatever you choose, I've got your back. She nodded, biting her lip. Her fingers hovered over two glowing buttons, release and destroy. Her mind raced. If she released it, Guardian could save millions, predict disasters, prevent wars. But it could also be twisted, corrupted, used to manipulate the world. If she destroyed it, the weapon would die, but so would the legacy of her parents, the truth they tried to preserve. Sophie's breath shook. Then she remembered her father's words. Trust your instincts. Protect the truth. Her fingers trembled over the release button. Guardian? Show me the truth, she whispered. The room pulsed with blue light as the system activated, scanning everything. Every historical record, every Black Ridge file, every hidden secret stored across governments and corporations. Sophie watched as the holographic streams connected in real time, exposing corruption, deceit, and hidden agendas. Shaw's eyes widened. She's unlocking it. Turner grinned faintly, leaning against a console. Well, kid, looks like you did it. But Sophie wasn't smiling. She felt the immense responsibility pressing down. Every secret guardian revealed a weight on her shoulders. Suddenly, alarms blared. The sound of approaching helicopters and vehicles vibrated through the ground. Black Ridge had found them. Sophie stood, holding the silver drive. We need to get out now. Shaw nodded. Follow the tunnels. They lead to the river. It's the only safe path. Guardian is now alive. It will protect you, but only if you move quickly. Turner grabbed her arm. Move, Sophie. They sprinted down the narrow tunnels beneath the hydro station. Water dripped from the ceiling, pooling at their feet. The hum of Guardian followed them, a faint pulse through the silver drive. It was alive, watching, protecting. Above ground, the Black Ridge forces reached the station. Helicopters hovered, searchlights piercing the forest. Soldiers stormed the area. But below, Sophie and Turner reached the river. The current was strong, sweeping them downstream. Sophie held the drive tightly, its glow bright against the dark water. Guardian had chosen her, and she had chosen it. As dawn broke over the mountains, the river carried them far from the station. Sophie looked at Turner, face streaked with mud and tears. We did it. Turner shook his head, awe in his eyes. No, you did it. I just survived long enough to see it? Sophie smiled faintly. She thought of her parents, of Captain Warren, of the countless lives Guardian could now touch. But she also knew the danger wasn't over. Black Ridge would hunt her. They would never stop. But for the first time, Sophie felt a spark of power, not just the ability to protect the system, but to choose how it would be used. She had become more than the echo. She was the living conscience of Guardian. And as the forest opened to the horizon, the sun casting long shadows over the mountains, Sophie whispered softly to the silver drive, I will protect the truth, always. The drive pulsed once, bright and steady, Guardian alive, aware, and now bound to her will. Somewhere far away, in a hidden command center, a Black Ridge operative swore under his breath. She's alive, and she has it all. Sophie tightened her grip on the silver drive. She didn't fear them anymore. Not now, not ever. She was no longer just a kid in row 9. She was Echo, and the world would hear her choice. The river carried them onward, toward freedom, toward an uncertain future. But this time, Sophie held the power to shape it. And somewhere deep in the code, her parents' voices whispered one final time, We trusted you, and you did not fail us. The story ends with Sophie surviving the crash, uncovering the truth about Guardian, facing the ultimate choice, and stepping into her role as Echo, the living key to her parents' legacy and the world's future.